if you are burnt out, you could end up being unproductive or anti-productive, and you're not efficient. You become resentful. And one of the strategies of you avoiding being burnt out is to always think about the consequences of being burnt out, because people would look at you that you're not very good at your job, or maybe the way you talk to your customers is because you're angry, because you become angry because you're tired, you're exhausted. The way you would speak to your customers is not, you wouldn't speak to them in a very polite way. It just, and to be honest, you might not see it that way, and that's just because you need some rest. Someone reached out to me and she said to me that she wanted my advice. She's currently a student, and she spends so much time in the library trying to study, work on her coursework. However, she has realized that she's always stressed and she's burnt out, and unfortunately she failed one of her units and she actually broke down and was wondering, or she was worried that what was it she was doing wrong. She was putting in so much effort, spending so much time in the library, and yet she failed one of her units. And she came to me and wanted advice from me. And then I asked her, you spend so much time in the library, but for every time you go to the library, do you have expectations? Do you have clear goals? And that was the starting point. And I have realized that I have been in these shoes before, to be honest. We get stressed out. Well, sometimes stress can be very good. It can be healthy because it helps us, it sort of motivates us to achieve our goals. But when we're not able to manage our stress, when stress is too much, we get burnt out. And when you're burnt out, you tend to make lots of mistakes, and people begin to term you as inefficient, and you're not effective, or you leave too much work for other people to do. Maybe within the work environment, people need to start correcting your mistakes because you're not able to manage your stress and you are burnt out. And also, when you're burnt out, it can actually make you do things that you usually do not do. For example, those that maybe drink alcohol, they begin to drink excessive alcohol, or they maybe abuse substances because they are burnt out. Sometimes, even for family people, you're burnt out because you have you have to look after the kids, you have to go to work, you have work commitments and other commitments, and you realize that you're always exhausted. Today I'll be sharing with you some strategies that can you can employ, you can adapt to avoid being burnt out, and you're you're being the best version of yourself. You're achieving success without being burnt out. I always try to remind you that it is a learning curve for everyone. It is a learning curve for me as well. And for every time I'm really stressed, I have my own strategy, which I'll be sharing with you. And you will, different strategies will work for different people. The key thing is you need to find what works for you, and you need to understand the point where you're being stressed, you're not able to manage the stress, and that's leading to burnout. Okay. If you don't know me, I am Bola Adeye Omishade, and this is the Bola Adeye Omishade Show. Thanks for joining. This is a community where we support people to be the best version of themselves. So thanks for joining us. You're in the right environment. Um, an episode is aired every Saturday 1 p.m. GMT. So that if you don't want to miss any of our episode, you want to click on the notification button. And yes, I would appreciate if you can subscribe as well. That means a lot to me. And of course, I have if you actually enjoy this episode, I want to click on the thumbs up as well. And for my returning viewers, thank you for all the feedback. I really appreciate your comments. I really appreciate those feedback. Thanks for your consistent support as well. Um, I hope you would enjoy this episode as well. Um, this week is the last few days has been really tough, and it's been sort of roller coaster for me, and especially when a close friend of mine lost her younger brother. um, I would like to use this opportunity to say that may his soul rest in peace. Right. I will be talking about how to avoid being burnt out and achieving a lot in today's episode. But first, before I go ahead to start talking about that, there are a couple of questions that needs to be very clear. And unfortunately, if you're not able to clarify those things that can cause you to be burnt out, those things that can facilitate being burnt out, we wouldn't head anywhere. Now, there are certain things that can actually cause being burnt out or being exhausted. Let's use it that way. For example, within your work environment, if you're becoming stressed, you don't want to you're always really tired, you don't want to go to work, you just there's always complaint. You want to ask yourself, your job expectation, do you really understand them? Is it very clear? That's one question you need to ask yourself, because I've realized that some people are not very clear on their job expectations, what their job description is. They haven't taken time to read the job description. And then for everything that is being thrown at them, they just take them on board, and they're not able to meet up to the expectation or their own expectation, and then they begin to stress and stress. So the first question you need to, I'm going to go into that in more details anyway, but the first question is your job expectation, is it very clear? In addition to that, I don't know, some people do not understand that in addition to work, there has to be a social aspect of work. You know, your job needs to include a social component to it. It cannot be work, 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 work. I don't know if some of you have been to, or you've maybe seen images or videos of the work environment of businesses like Microsoft, Google, big businesses. They have like they have tennis, they have snooker, they have lots of, they have lots of social activities, and that is, they encourage the social environment so that when people have spent so much time doing tedious tasks or maybe tasks, they can take a break, take a walk, and do something else to relax their brain so that they're able to manage that too much stress. There's a break time. There's a time to break, to reflect and do something else, and then come back refreshed. So the other question you need to ask yourself is there a social aspect to this job? And if it's in regards to you being stressed with your family schedule, and is it just you taking care of your children without having the social component to it? For those that know me, you always see me. I always like dance with my husband. We have proper dinners, like we're having events. And that's the social component because I really work hard. I work really hard. And I can't go on and on and on without having something different. So I'll talk, yeah, like I said, I'll talk about that in more detail. So, but the other thing is you need to ask yourself, is there a social component to what I'm doing? Now, are you also burning your candles at the extreme end? You don't really know when to stop. And especially with the recent outbreak, so many of us are working remotely, working from home, and you really don't know when to stop. Because of course, maybe look at the instance of you going to work and then you have to finish work and then you go home. But now where our computer is just like a few meters away from us, just even in our bedroom, my computer is in my bedroom, it's just close to my bed, you know. So we don't really know when to stop. We're always just coming onto the computer to do work. And then we keep working, and then we get burnt out. So that's another question you need to ask yourself. And I'll be talking about some strategies to really avoid you getting burnt out. So there are a couple of questions, those questions that you need to ask yourself. Now, for me to go into the different strategies to avoid being burnt out, the first thing I always say to people, you always hear people say, prioritize, prioritize, prioritize. But we sometimes prioritize in our head, and we have like two things that are a priority, but we're not very clear on which one it has the utmost priority. So the first thing is this task I need to, is it very important now? If I don't do it, what is the consequence of not doing it? Can I leave it till later and take a break? So there are certain questions you need to ask yourself. You know, I I I think in the last few weeks, I have been so exhausted. And what I do is I think, was it last weekend or 2 weekends ago? I think it was 2 weekends ago. What I do is I just do not do work, including housework. I do not just do any work. And all I do is sit down and watch my Chinese or Korean movie. I do absolutely well. To, to be fair, I maybe cook, give my daughter food, try and look after her, you know, and then I'm just sat down there watching my Korean movie. And I watch it like for days because I know that I am stressed. I have gotten to the peak of the point where I cannot process anything effectively. And I do not want to make mistakes. So I just leave my computer. Apparently, it actually gets to a point where sometimes my husband even asks me some questions, and I say to him, I cannot think. And that's because I don't want to think. I don't want to advise you wrongly. At this point, I'm at the point, actually at the peak, and now I need to take a break. And trust me, I just sit down there and watch the Korean movie. I watch it until I'm maybe tired and I know that I have satisfied myself. So, when in the process of, before I actually go into watching this Korean movie, I ensure that I do not have anything that needs urgent attention, that needs there. I actually put myself in a position where the things that I need to do can be done after a couple of days. Now, you find yourself in maybe businesses where you do not have that opportunity, and people just, or maybe your managers or your bosses, bombards you with lots of work. That is the point where you need an emergency holiday if there is a need, or a holiday even if it's not emergency, because you realize that you just keep doing work, you keep pushing yourself, and you keep making mistakes. You're not as productive as you're supposed to, and that actually portrays a very bad, it sends a bad signal about you. And that's when they start saying, what's wrong with you? You're not as effective as you used to be. And then you also start getting tired of the job. So you need to ask yourself, and the other thing is, you also need to ask yourself, am I the only person that can do this job? So if it's a role where somebody else can do it, you need to just ask for help and say that, oh, can you do this for me? I am exhausted. Be very truthful about it. I am stressed out. Can you do this for me? So in the process of prioritizing, you ask yourself, is there somebody else that can do this job? And that's if it is, if it's not something that you can maybe move aside for a while, always ask, can I push this to somebody else? Can somebody else do this? And also, you also need to ask yourself, am I actually sitting down on this task in while I am trying to avoid something else? Because you see, sometimes we can just sit down somewhere trying to pretend to do work when we are actually not doing work. And that's because you're trying to avoid something. So you really need to be clear on, am I just sitting down there, or am I going to am I just, because I'm trying to avoid something? You need to be, he has to be very clear. And like I said at the beginning, it is only you that can actually understand what works for you. It is only you that would understand if you're avoiding something. If you're burnt out, you're stressed out, I can only encourage you by doing what I'm doing. But it lies in your own hands and efforts to put yourself to check, to prioritize the things that you need to do, and say that I need to take a break. Okay. And then you start strategizing and working your way out of being burnt out. Now, do not, I have said this several times, do not say yes when you mean to say no. You know, you find yourself in some not very pleasant work environment where people will just throw um, tasks or responsibilities to you. And that is where the job description comes into place. You always need to have a clear understanding of your job description. And if your job description says 9 to 5, stick to 9 to 5. Anything outside 9 to 5 is, you're eating into your self-care time. You're eating into your own personal time. Now, if people understand that after 6 p.m. Bola will not take any job responsibility, it just shows that you're very confident. But now get this right. 9 to 5, you have to be very productive. And then if there, of course, you need to take a break in between, because you can't work 9 to 5 straight. There has to be a couple of breaks, but ensure that that 9 to 5 you are very productive and you're doing things that you're supposed to do, so that when it is 5 p.m. you know you're not taking anything work, and that is your own time, and it clearly states that within your job description. And if you're able to go back and say, well, my job description says, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to do, and somebody is trying to push on a task that is not yours, a task that will get you to start thinking beyond what you need to do, or maybe stressing or wasting so much time having to learn things that you're not familiar with when they haven't even provided you with the time, then you begin to stress and you start becoming burnt out. And if it's a task that you've been given and you don't even know it, it's always, it's okay to say that I don't know it, or say, no, you need to give me time. I'm not familiar with this. I'm happy to learn. You need to give me time. And you need to actually keep a track record, keep evidences, because sometimes you find yourself where people would use your words against you, but you need to keep records so that when they've given you the task and you said, well, I'm happy to do it, but I need time to learn, send an email and just say, if it was a verbal conversation, you want to send email and say, okay, I have this is the conversation we had. You would need to give me, just to confirm that you need to give me so time to complete this task. And then you know that both of you are on the same page and nobody's using it against you as you not being efficient or effective if you are not meeting the deadline. Okay. And just before I said that, if it is something you know that you do not know, or you do not have time, or is going to eat into your own personal time where you're supposed to spend with your family, all you need to say is no. I'm happy to look at it tomorrow when I resume, but unfortunately I have to go now. Or if it is something you say, I cannot do, sorry, I cannot do it. I would love to, but I have too many things to do. Just in a very polite way, say no. If you are burnt out, you could end up being unproductive or anti-productive, and you're not efficient. You become resentful. And one of the strategies of you avoiding being burnt out is to always think about the consequences of being burnt out. Because people would look at you that you're not very good at your job, or maybe the way you talk to your customers is because you're angry, because you become angry, because you're tired, you're exhausted. The way you would speak to your customers is not, you wouldn't speak to them in a very polite way. And to be honest, you might not see it that way. And that's just because you need some rest. So you always want to think about the consequences of being burnt out, because you don't want to be anti-productive, or you don't want to be unproductive. So you have to be very, very careful and stop when you need to stop. And one way of motivating yourself to do that is you can get somebody to remind you, or maybe always plan like a family dinner to say, okay, at this time I need to have a family dinner, or I need to cook this sort of meal. And that actually takes you out of work, because you already made up your mind that at 6 p.m. I need to stop because I need to cook this delicious food for my daughter, or this delicious food for my husband, or I want to spend time with my family, or get somebody, I want to go out with my friend, or possibly even set a reminder to say that I need to stop, just to stop yourself from going, because we can easily get carried away, keep working. Sometimes I've had people say that when you work, you're going to be successful. Mm. You have to have the work and life balance. There has to be a balance. There has to be time where you need to sit down and reflect, and if not just about reflecting, take your mind away from that business, take your mind away from that work, and you realize that when you come back refreshed. And sometime last year, when I was really at some point, I was really stressed, and one of my very close friends said, "Oh, why don't you exercise? And when you're stressed." And to be honest, I tried it. So for every time I was really stressed, I was really tired, and I woke up in the morning and I did a bit of exercise. I didn't used to do too much. I just did 10, 15 minutes. I realized that I was more productive on those days where I did exercise. It made me really stronger, and that is actually what works for me. So you might find something else that works for you. Could be maybe changing your eating pattern, or changing your maybe drinking enough water, just living a healthy lifestyle can help you avoid being burnt out. Because overall, what we're trying to do is we want to be the best version of ourselves. And like I mentioned earlier, this person that came to me and said she spent so much time in the library. And I said to her that, of course, do you have clear goals? Now, for every day when you're going into your business or when you're going to your work, do you have clear goals of these are the things that I need to do today? That helps a lot. I have seen people that say, "Oh, I have it up in my head." All you need to do is just take a step further and just write it down. That's all you need. You need to just put it in bullet points and say, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. You realize that when you write them down, and at the end of the day, you're ticking those things that you have done, you feel fulfilled, you feel that you have achieved something. But when it's still in your head, you just feel pressure to keep going on and on when it's not even needed. So I would implore you to take that step and just write it down. When you get to maybe your working place, look at what some people have routine of what they need to do. Just you can print it out and take it and say, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And you realize that at the end of the day, when you go back to those things that you've ticked and it's time for you to go home, you just pack your bag and go. You're just motivated because you feel you have achieved enough. And even if you're not able to meet those things that you need to, you can say, okay, this can go on to tomorrow's schedule or the next day's schedule. So I I know that you might feel comfortable leaving those schedules or those tasks for the day in your head, but I am imploring you today that to avoid being stressed, to avoid being burnt out, take that bold step and start writing what your daily schedule should be. Okay, what you intend to achieve by the end of the working day. Okay, and another very important one is always remember that you need to look after yourself. If you have that mindset that you need to look after yourself, because I was saying to somebody, I said, your workplace it does not take them the next few days to replace you if anything happens to you. It is the sad truth. They would, because the business has to go on. If you fall ill or anything bad, God forbid, happens to you, their business has to go on. Hence, you need to look after yourself, care for yourself. You're working out your body, and it's just like you need to empty the bin sometimes so that you can make space, isn't it? So you have lots of things in your head that you are processing. At some point, you need to empty the garbage. And how can you empty that garbage? By taking time and spending time for yourself, doing that thing that you like to do. And that, like I said, for me, I just watch my Chinese, my Korean, or I want to have a party with my husband and my daughter, and I set my table nicely, or I start thinking about how do I want to set my table to look nice and take pictures and enjoy the food, or maybe I'm thinking of the combination of the food I want to cook and how I want to present it on the table. Or better still, for those that know me, or I want to organize your party for you and think of how we're going to make the party look really beautiful. That is my own way of relaxing. That is my own way of reducing being stressed. And you should find what works for you. Do that thing that you love. Okay. And at that point where you begin to realize that you are not enjoying your business, you're not enjoying your job, you're when you get corrected, it doesn't go well with you within your when your managers are correcting you, it doesn't go well with you. Then that's the point where you need to start thinking of changing jobs or changing the business, because you realize that you're always stressed out. I was working in a place at the time at some point, and uh, just the mention of that place, I would just hiss, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to work again. I didn't even want to hear that I was going to work, and that's because I, I that was the limit. I just couldn't. I didn't enjoy the job anymore, and so that I don't start making mistake, so that I don't get myself in trouble, so that I don't do the wrong things, or even the business, I don't cause the business to cause trouble, or maybe get them into debt or something. I needed to change jobs. And that was when I said, okay, this is the time to move on. So for you, if you realize that for every time you need to think, oh God, I am going to work again today. Oh God, I hate this job. You need to start thinking of quitting and moving or looking for another job. Or maybe it can actually be the environment. Maybe it might be an environment where the managers are not friendly. You can change department, so you could still be in the business, but maybe you want to change environment, you want to change team, and change the kind of people you work with, because you don't want them. Because when you're not effective, they wouldn't see that the environment is not friendly enough for you. What they would come to you to say is you are not as effective or not as efficient as the way they want you to be. So it's better that you start taking steps to change the team or to change the department that you are in before it starts becoming a problem for you. So the other thing that you also want to think about is, um, like I said, maybe you want to leave the job entirely and start looking for something else to do. I understand that sometimes you might not have the opportunity to change businesses because you cannot afford it, or you cannot change jobs because you haven't found a job. One other strategy you can use is to start celebrating your achievements. So when you write those tasks down, like I advised earlier, celebrate your achievements. Those tiny little bits of achievement, even if it's just maybe doing tiny little bit of, celebrate it. You celebrate yourself and pat yourself on the back. Just celebrate those tiny little bit of wins, because it sort of motivates you. Make them look big. Celebrate yourself, celebrate those accomplishments for the day, celebrate the accomplishments for the week. If it is even something that the team has done and you haven't even celebrated, maybe the team has not celebrated, you celebrate on the behalf of the team, or say, well, it's cause for celebration, we're all here and we've done this together, we've achieved this together. That will sort of put you in a positive position, you know and like I said earlier, we there is the mindset that long duration, when you spend so much time doing something, you achieve a lot. No, sometimes you just spend just very short time doing something and you achieve quality as opposed to quantity. I think I'll use that choice of word. Quality. It's always better to achieve quality. So for any one of you watching, tell me, how have you been able to manage your you being stressed out? Because I have shared my own way of, and mine would of course might be the same, but different from yours. I know that my brother also watches um Chinese and Korean movie, just sort of his own way as well as my own way of relieving our stress. So what's your own way? I want to hear from you. Share in the comments, how do you avoid being burnt out and achieving so much? For me, when I finish watching maybe one episode of because they're always very long episodes, I come back and I am very, very effective, and you won't believe how much I will be able to achieve in a very short time, because I have taken time to do something different. So share with me in the comments. I want to hear from you. What are the sort of things you do, and what problems have you faced? Because sometimes we for example, you can be stuck, you cannot leave the job, you cannot change the business. How have you been able to manage these sort of things in order to achieve so much? Why being able to manage your stress? Because trust me, you need stress sometimes. And if you say you're not going to be stressed, that's not true. You will be stressed, because if change is constant. So you might not be stressed for a while, but sometimes you will just be stressed, and it might not last for a long time. But share with me how you've been able to manage that, so that I would like to read from you, and I know that other people would want to learn from you as well. Now, just to summarize everything I have said, the first thing is you need to ask yourself, what is the reason why I am being stressed? What is the reason why I'm being burnt out? You need to be very clear on that. Ask yourself, is it that there is no social aspect to my business? Is it that there's no social aspect to my work? You also need to ask yourself, is there a work-life balance? Do I have a work-life balance? Okay. And another one I said is, are you working, burning the candles at the end? You're just working out of hours, working long durations, and without achieving so much. Or you don't have very clear job description. It's your job description or work description is undefined. It's not very clear. It's not defined. You don't understand. You haven't read your job description. And so many more. It's not limited to this. There's so many things. And the first advice I've given is, you need to prioritize and ask yourself, is there somebody that can do this? Is this something that I can leave, I can put aside? What is the consequences if I leave it and I don't do it? Okay. You also need to celebrate those small accomplishments. Okay. Celebrate those small wins. They might look very tiny, but celebrate them. Okay. And I've also said, it gets to a point where you're not just, corrections that come to you do not just go with you. Then at that point, you need to know if this is the time you need to change jobs, or maybe change the department that you are in. And yes, so many more that I have shared. And also remember that you do not need to say yes when you mean to say no. If it is a no, it is a no. Be very clear, and that just shows that you're confident and you know what you're doing. You know when to stop, because it's a skill as well. I think I've said that in one of my episodes. It is a skill when you know how to say no. Well, I know that I'm guilty of this. Sometimes I really don't know how to say no. I'm learning as well. I have some strategies I use in my own way. And like I said, it's a learning curve, but it is healthy to say no, and not to say yes when you mean to say no. So if you have found this very, very useful, I want you to leave your comment and tell me what you have learned, what you're taking away from this episode. What is your biggest takeaway? What are you going to start doing from today in order to avoid being too stressed that might lead to being burnt out? and what you're going to do to achieve success. Leave them in the comment. I want to hear from you what you have taken away from this episode. And of course, if you have found this very useful as well, do not forget to give it a thumbs up. It means a lot. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing that. I want to see the love button. Yeah, let that keep rolling. And if you, of course, if you want to join us next week, do not forget to click on the notification button so that you are reminded, and share this with anybody that would find this very useful. Share it with your friends, share it with your family that you know that is always very stressed and they need to hear some of my strategies that they can employ. Share this with them. And as usual, if you have any questions, you have any topic that you want me to talk about, do not forget to send me an email. The email is on the screen. Follow our social media pages on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. And thanks for joining me today. I'm excited that you have watched till the end, and I will see you next week. And this is Bola Adeyeye Omishade. Bye.